Want to improve your life? Watch this. It was the fall of 2011 when David landed at Pearson International Airport in Toronto with 2 bags, one half-empty wallet, and a heart full of impossible dreams. The air was colder than anything he had ever experienced, the kind of cold that sneaks under your jacket and whispers in your bones that you are not ready. But he told himself, if this land can freeze me, maybe it can also build me. He had grown up in a small town in India where opportunities were like rare stars, visible only on the clearest nights, and now he was standing in a country where the skyline itself whispered of possibility. Yet, the very next morning, he found himself mopping floors in a downtown restaurant, inhaling the mix of frying oil and detergent, questioning if this was really the land of dreams. Every plate he scrubbed carried with it an echo of his mother's words, "Don't forget why you left." His co-workers often laughed at his accent, but he swallowed the insult like bitter medicine, reminding himself that every immigrant before him had endured this. He walked home through the Canadian winter streets where lights decorated shop windows, families carried shopping bags, and children laughed freely, while he counted the coins in his pocket to see if he could afford a bus ticket or if he would walk miles in the snow. Yet, inside, a voice told him, this is only the beginning. The struggle sharpened when he tried applying for better jobs. Every resume he sent was swallowed in silence. Employers wanted Canadian experience, a cruel paradox for newcomers. How do you get experience if no one gives you the first chance? Nights turned into long conversations with himself in the rented basement room where the walls smelled of dampness, and the sound of footsteps upstairs reminded him he was living under someone else's roof. But David wasn't ready to surrender. Every day after work, he would go to the public library, reading about entrepreneurship, studying the stories of people who had started with nothing, Howard Schultz selling coffee, Richard Branson failing before he soared, and countless unknown immigrants who had carved futures in unforgiving soil. Those stories weren't just stories, they were oxygen for his suffocating hope. One night, while returning from the restaurant, he missed his bus. The next one was an hour away, and the streets were nearly deserted. He sat on the icy bench, breath visible in the night air, shivering but staring at the neon sign of a nearby store that read, "Tomorrow's Lottery." He thought, what if my tomorrow isn't a lottery? What if it's built with the hours I refuse to waste? That night he decided he would not just survive in Canada, he would create. He didn't know how, but the conviction settled deep inside him like a fire that the winter couldn't touch. Weeks turned into months. He worked as a dishwasher, then a delivery boy, then in a warehouse stacking boxes heavier than his body wanted to carry. Each job tested his endurance, but also toughened his spirit. He learned to say thank you even when his back hurt, learned to smile even when his stomach growled because the paycheck barely covered rent. But with every dollar he saved, he bought books instead of luxuries, notebooks instead of new clothes. His friends mocked him, saying, "Why study business? You're just a dishwasher." Yet he wrote down ideas every night, sometimes wild, sometimes small, delivery apps, cultural cafes, digital platforms, dreams scribbled in the margins of exhaustion. His first real attempt at business was selling homemade snacks to international students. He convinced a friend to cook with him and started delivering samosas and tea around campus. For a brief moment, it felt like destiny was smiling. Orders came in, word spread, and he imagined scaling it into a cafe chain. But within weeks, the university shut them down for not having licenses. Loss hit him like a punch in the stomach. He lost money, friends, and for a few nights, his belief. "Maybe I'm not made for this," he whispered in the dark, the silence of the basement pressing against his chest. But failure didn't extinguish him, it challenged him. Toronto taught him that dreams without resilience die in the snow. He decided to move to London, UK, after hearing from a cousin that opportunities were better there. Once again, he packed his life in 2 bags, this time carrying not only clothes but also scars of lessons learned. London greeted him with rain instead of snow, and new struggles instead of comfort. He slept on couches, worked at a convenience store, and cleaned offices at night. But the city's heartbeat was different, it was relentless, unforgiving, yet filled with stories of people who had risen from the cracks. He felt anonymous in the crowd, but anonymity also gave him the freedom to fail again and again without the world mocking him. One day, while waiting at a bus stop after another 14-hour shift, he overheard two strangers discussing how small businesses struggle to adapt to digital marketing. Something clicked. He had been reading about digital platforms, social media, and e-commerce in his stolen hours at the library. What if I could help them, he thought. That night he wrote down his first real business plan, a digital marketing service for small immigrant-owned shops who couldn't afford big agencies. He had no office, no employees, not even a laptop of his own. But he had the hunger. And hunger, he realized, was the greatest capital of all. London was not gentle. The rain felt like it carried centuries of stories, and David was just another drop lost in its rhythm. Yet in those endless bus rides across the city, between one job and another, his mind began to sharpen the blurry outline of his dream. He wanted to build something that mattered, something that gave small shopkeepers, the very people he worked with and for, a fighting chance in a digital age that was swallowing them whole. He didn't have resources, but he had eyes that observed and ears that listened. Every small shop he passed, whether a Pakistani grocer in East Ham or a Jamaican bakery in Brixton, reminded him of his own parents' struggle back home, hard-working people, talented, honest, but trapped by the lack of visibility. He started with nothing but a borrowed laptop from a friend who trusted him more than he trusted himself. Night, after finishing shifts at the convenience store, he sat in the corner of a 24-hour cafe, learning the language of digital ads, search engines, and social media. His English was sometimes clumsy, his accent thick, but the internet didn't care about accents, it cared about ideas. He created a simple flyer offering affordable digital help for small shops and printed copies using almost his last saved pounds. Then came the hardest part, walking into stores, introducing himself, and trying not to sound like another salesman. The first dozen rejections burned his confidence. Shop owners dismissed him with polite nods or suspicious eyes. Some laughed outright. "You think Facebook can sell my bread?" one baker chuckled. But one night, a tired-looking Bangladeshi restaurant owner agreed to let David run his social media for free for a week. David poured everything into it: photos, posts, engaging captions, learning algorithms, experimenting with ad budgets. Within days, the restaurant saw new customers trickling in, curious about the dishes they had seen online. The owner was stunned. For the first time, he realized the power of visibility. He paid David a small amount, not much, but enough to prove that his idea wasn't just a fantasy. It was real. With that one client, word of mouth began to move slowly, like the first sparks of fire. David juggled cleaning offices at night, working in the shop during the day, and squeezing business work in between. His health suffered, dark circles under his eyes, a body constantly aching, but his spirit fed on every small victory. 2 clients turned into 5, 5 into 10. Each pound he earned went back into the business: a second-hand laptop, a cheap website, a bus pass to travel across London. He didn't party, didn't buy clothes, didn't go out. His friends called him obsessed. But obsession, he realized, was just another word for commitment when no one else believes in you. Then came the storm. One of his clients accused him of wasting their money when an ad campaign didn't perform. The word spread among the small community, and overnight, 3 of his contracts were cancelled. He felt the ground collapse beneath his feet. The shame of failure hit harder in a foreign land where no one knew your past, but everyone remembered your mistakes. For 3 days, he didn't leave his rented room. He stared at the ceiling, his chest heavy, replaying every wrong move. Maybe he wasn't good enough. Maybe his friends were right. Maybe he was just another immigrant fool chasing Western fantasies. On the 4th night, he forced himself onto a bus, just to breathe outside air. The bus was nearly empty, rain sliding down the windows. He looked at his reflection, tired, beaten, but not dead. Across the aisle sat an old woman reading a book. On the cover were the words, fail better. Something about those two words cracked open his despair. Fail better. Maybe failure wasn't a wall. Maybe it was a step, sharp and painful, but a step upward. David returned to his tiny desk and rebuilt. He called back the angry client, apologized sincerely, and offered free service until results came. He experimented with new strategies, spent nights testing ad models with his own money, ate instant noodles for weeks to save on food. Slowly, results came. That same client who had cursed him now recommended him to others. This time, instead of collapsing under pressure, he built systems, learned to set expectations, and treated every mistake as a teacher rather than a thief. London started to change for him. He was no longer invisible. Small shop owners began recognizing his name. His clients grew to 20, then 30. He hired 2 part-time freelancers, also immigrants struggling to survive, giving them not just money but belief. For the first time, he wasn't working alone. He had a team, however fragile. He felt alive in a way he hadn't since stepping off that first plane in Toronto. But success, however small, always tests loyalty. Some of his old friends, the ones who mocked him, now suddenly wanted to partner. Others accused him of changing, becoming arrogant. It hurt, but he realized not everyone is meant to walk with you to the end. Some people are only chapters, not the whole book. He kept his focus on the mission, giving small businesses a voice in a digital world. Yet deep inside, he still carried a void. He wasn't doing this just for money. He was doing it to prove that he, a dishwasher from Toronto, a convenience store clerk from London, could rewrite his fate. He wanted to inspire others who sat on cold benches waiting for buses, thinking their dreams were too far away. One evening, after signing his biggest contract yet with a local grocery chain, he walked back through the streets of London, lights glowing in the mist. He saw a bus pass by, number 29, filled with tired workers heading home. He smiled. Once, he had been one of them, dreaming on those late-night rides. Now, he wasn't just dreaming, he was building. And somewhere deep inside, he knew, this was only the beginning.